Here's Spawn Wave showing off the Xperia Play. This is the standard black model. I can't get into this device because there's no physical analog, but that's just me. Why do you guys like it? Why do you guys like it?
Think of it like a Miu Mini.
There you go.
Like neither does
that. All three you have it?
I almost picked it too, but I'm like, we're going to talk about the Xperia Play regardless.
Yours is here.
Something else.
In heart. Because the innards of this one came from you, so.
I had an Xperia Play inside of me?
Yes, exactly. They came from inside of you. We traded a bunch of handhelds like a while ago.
Oh, right.
And one of them was
sent it to you
an Xperia Play, yeah. So I put like fresh parts on it and everything, and did like a big custom ROM of like a website that doesn't exist anymore. It's an old baby of mine. That's what got me into this whole thing.
The Xperia Play holds up. It holds up so well. It's absolutely absurd. I mean, I was playing N64 on the Xperia Play in like 2011. I mean, not amazingly, but it was possible. And it's just, I wish I had mine here because I feel like I'm the only one that doesn't. But I do have 5 right over there in various states of disrepair.
You have 5 Xperia Plays?
Yeah, I've been meaning to fix them, but I just haven't got around to it. But sorry, I think, well, this is both mine, Damien, so I'll have a little bit. I have such an emotional connection to this device. Like, it's almost like silly. And I feel like the biggest nerd in the world, but it's just one of those devices that I will never dislike it. And let me go away from emulation real quick, because it's something that I found really interesting with the Xperia Play was the native games. And you might know Gameloft, the mobile game studio. Yeah. They got a lot of flack back in 2011, 12, 13 for basically ripping off console games and putting them on mobile. So they had a game called Shadow Guardian, which was Uncharted. They had Star Battalion with Star Fox. They had Backstab, which was Assassin's Creed Black Flag before Assassin's Creed Black Flag existed. They had all these games that they were putting in. They were putting them on an Xperia Play with controller support. And they were just, when you look back, it had to be the beginning of mobile gaming. Like, seriously, those games were so good for the time. And I just love them so much. And the Xperia Play is just, it's just such an amazing device. Go ahead, Rob.
No, I was just going to say, I missed that Gameloft generation. That they were, honestly, I know they were doing copycat games, but man, they were fun to play. They were good.
It's what mobile needed at the time. They really needed it because, we didn't have that. We had the Java era, and then we kind of slipped into like the Android era without, iPhone was doing okay with games. But, Android didn't really have anything other than regular, tap puzzle games. And then Gameloft comes along with like full 3D open world Assassin's Creed clone out of nowhere, And it was just such a good device for that. And, Sony actually supported their devs really well. Their API was really well documented, really easy to use. And there was a huge community around the time. There was a website called XperiaGamer.net. And I actually met the guy that ran it, and he was just such a cool guy. He worked for Sony. I remember just chatting with him about the Xperia Play, and we were just nerding out about it. But it's just one of those devices that nothing will ever have an impact on me like that one did. Yeah, beautiful.
And the cool thing about the Xperia Play too is that a lot of the versions that were released were actually sort of exclusive for the Xperia Play because they added controller support. So at the time, if you had like an Android phone, you couldn't actually get that controller support in it. So it was kind of cool. It just. Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way as you guys about it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great device.
I think that the saddest thing, though, about all that is that it was a time of really bad DRM, and many of the best Xperia Play games are no longer playable on it, and I don't think they ever will be. I even tried to circumvent it myself before, but it was just way too much work. But you can still play Shadow Guardian, which is an Uncharted clone, which is it's a fun little game. But stuff like Dungeon Hunter, which was Diablo, and what was it? Nova, which was Halo. Like all those are kind of gone, which is just such a tragedy. But maybe one day somebody will bring it back. Who knows? I'll send one to Black Seraph.
Yeah. If there's anybody, man, who could probably get it going.
Well, especially when you look at the modern day versions of those series. they're all like online play required. You have to connect
Yeah.
to the internet. It's a shame. I mean,
Mm.
I kind of hate that when you have a single player game that requires the internet to play it. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's interesting. I'll go over this super quick. The DRM in those old Game Lost games works like this. It says, here's the game. Okay, you run the game. Do we have the data package installed? If it's no, it reaches out to the server and downloads it. If it's yes, it reaches out to the server and says, hey, can I play this? And then it says, no, you can't, because you know. But the problem is, all it needs from the server is that yes. And so technically, all you need to do is to circumvent that and make it return a yes, and it should work, because it doesn't actually need to download anything. But, you know, like I said, I'm not a super skilled developer, so I wasn't able to get very far with it. But yeah, it is what it is. Xperia Play, though, beautiful device.
It's going to be an upcoming retrospective for my channel. I'm gonna really do a deep dive in it because it's just worth talking about. It's a great device.
Yeah.
We're definitely kind of over the cliff of like being able to get one at a reasonable price. Like they're starting to go up. The parts are very hard to find. I have a spare ribbon cable that I bought 3 years ago, because I just knew that they were getting harder to find, and that's the part that breaks all the time. But it's still forever one of my favorites. It's a little tiny Android that's about the size of, you know, when you put it down, like a U Mini or something like that. It just goes right in your pocket. It's definitely still one of my favorite little mobile guys.
Yeah.
And that's one I had for a little while, because Damien, I know I got one from you, and it had a bigger battery mod on it, so it had this honking battery, and it was heavy.
Battery.
And I ended up switching to the smaller battery, and all I did with it was just load RetroArch and just do some basic emulation. I thought, okay, all right, this is cool, but I never had one back in the day, so there was no nostalgia factor for me, and I'm like, okay, there's a lot of other devices right now that are going to do this better. So, but now I'm kind of missing it a little bit. You guys are kind of getting me like that FOMO right now. Like, Xperia Play, yes.
It's cool to have in the collection, you know. I mean, really, like if you are really serious about these kind of devices, it's kind of an interesting piece of history in terms of the whole space. And it still has some merit. It's still worth owning in that sense. So yeah, I like it a lot. You know.
I would even argue that it's actually a very viable pocket retro gaming device. Like it really is.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I still use mine all the time.
Tiny.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, there's like the 405M, which is, this is just what I have in reach, and this thing is like
yeah, that's so good. Look at that.
So pocketable.
Very tiny.
So
beautiful.
pocketable.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Rob, what about you?
So I picked the kind of one that I talked about recently, which was it was actually the Razer Phone 2 with the Jungle Cat controller attached.
Right.
Like, here, I got this thing over here.
Let's pull up a retro tech dad video.
Kind of a wide boy, but it actually has a 16:9 screen. And the cool thing is this Jungle Cat controller is kind of like Switch style.
What?
It's really crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, huh.
Wait a minute, and that pairs right on like a Switch to the Razer Phone 2?
Yeah, it's all done with Bluetooth. I mean, yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean,
that's nuts.
The screen on it is fantastic. I mean, it's 16:9, which is kind of like the big thing about it, especially for emulation.
Yeah.
Still got enough power. It's got a Snapdragon 845 on it.
I mean, right there, it's rocking what?
Yeah.
Outrun 2006?
You know, it's a cool little device, you know, and again, typical Razer, they just don't know how to market their things. It's the same thing we're seeing with the Razer Edge. It's like, they completely bumbled that. And
hey, at least
same
we're
thing
getting
with the
lineage.
phone.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you know.
I like how the Jungle Cat doesn't block the speakers of the Razer Phone 2. It's so good.
It's cool because it's like the case. It's like a case that's molded for it. And
yeah,
so well. I mean, Razer actually has
RGB lighting.
Just don't know what to do with it.
I have two Razer Phone 2s in my box of projects, but the screens are still absurdly expensive to replace, and they both have broken screens. So when
that's
those
the thing I've noticed,
if they drop, I'll repair them for sure.
They are hard to come by too. It's weird. Like I mean, especially in good condition. I mean, the USB-C ports fail on them. Typical Razer build quality. It's not meant for longevity. So
it was a fast phone. I had one for a brief time as well. I liked the I liked it, but the edges were so damn sharp that I ended up switching it for like a Galaxy or something.
Well, especially when you compare it to the phones that were being released at the time. I mean, you
Right.
could see why this thing flopped. I mean, it just looked so odd in a space where phones were starting to transition to like 18:9, really thin bezels. You know, the speakers on the side kind of made it look really chunky and big. So, yeah, it's a cool device to look back on now.
Right.
But at the time, I could understand why it didn't do so well. But it was
Well-
kind of like one of the first truly marketed gaming phones too, which was kind of interesting about it as well. So yeah,
I mean, I would have picked one of these up if I had known the Jungle Cat was there and I could have had this awesome Switch-like experience. I probably would have kept it.
it should have been in the box. It honestly should
It should have been
a package. Like,
it should have been the Razer. It should have been the Razer Edge Gen 1.
Yeah.
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it is. Well, let's take a look at, while we're on YouTube, let's plug our guest, Retro Breeze, again. So we got Shem here. Congrats on the 6K, by the way. You're on your way to 10K.
Wow. Amazing.
Thank you.
Now, I always go, anytime I have questions about the N-Gage, this is the channel. This is the only channel I reference.
You mean this one?
Yes, the QD.
Yeah.
Get up to the... Oh, my Retro Tech Daddy has one too.
Of course,
there we go.
absolutely. You know what's funny is that I actually owned the Taco phone originally back in the day. I never had the QD. The QD was something I added to my collection later on, but I was all Taco phone back in the day.
Yeah. Well, I think that in retrospect, it is the better hardware. Just a little bit. It's a bit more comfortable, for gaming purely. It's got a little bit better battery and speakers, but I mean, the QD is just such a neat little device.
I actually would love to get the original one again. I kind of miss it. I have nostalgia for it,
Yeah.
I don't have it now just because, and as Shem's showing here, you can emulate the N-Gage on a lot of systems on Android with what is it? ETA?
EKA2L1.
Yeah, EKA2L1. What does that stand for, by the way? Do you know what that naming means?
No idea.
Random.
Something to do with Symbian, I'm guessing.
Oh, okay.
Because it's actually a Symbian OS emulator.
Right, and
for gaming.
Symbian also runs on Nokia phones, other Nokia phones.
Yep.
And then there was a follow-up N-Gage, an N-Gage 2.0, which has a Metal Gear out for it, which you and I talked about a bunch last year. I still want to play that, but I can't figure out a way to do it without buying an N-Gage 2.0 device.
Well, you can emulate it on the N95. Beautiful, very good, Rob.
Big screen
there,
which is cool because like this one had the typical slider stuff.
Yeah,
and that slides out the other side.
You do it that way.
Yeah,
and you got controls on the sides here, which is really cool.
And that becomes your gamepad controls. It's excellent.
Yeah,
it's so good.
This is if you want to play 2.0 N-Gage stuff, this is definitely the way to do it for sure.
Yes, N95 8 gig version.
Oh yeah,
beautiful. And actually, it had hardware acceleration.
It's a really cool platform to mess around with. Like it's just again another oddball in terms of handheld history, in terms of mobile gaming. Like it's just fascinating. Like
it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah,
pushing almost 20 years old too. It's just like, oh, that's crazy.
Well, the EKA2L1 emulator does original N-Gage and the N-Gage 2.0 platform. And my video is very old. It's a very early video I made, but it still works. It works on any Android device. Like literally, you can do this on the cheapest Android device and it works fine. And Stubbs, if you go back to my channel, I made something pretty cool for emulating N-Gage.
Oh, let's do it.
I love Renshill's comment too.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh,
it's beautiful.
The only stream on the internet where two people would randomly have N-Gages within arm reach, unprompted. Yeah, we didn't even have N-Gage on the show notes, by the way. Nope. We had other devices, but N-Gage was not something we had listed, so I love it.
Hey, can I answer Team Pandora's question, actually?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, Metal Gear Solid Mobile. It takes place between Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2. And I it's not like a deep story, but it's basically, oh no, anything I say is going to ruin the game. It takes place between 1 and 2. It's stylistically like 1, but with the kind of, or graphically like 1 with the style of 2. It's cool. It has a really interesting stealth camo mechanic where you take photos of objects with the real camera, and it changes Snake's camo to the color of the object. So you take a photo of a Coke can, his camo turns red. It's great.
Do you have any content on this on the channel here?
Yeah, my tutorial will show a bit of gameplay on it. The one that you were on before. But what I want to share...
I think I told you, Shem, that's how I found your channel a while back. And yeah, I mean, I was just searching, like, has anyone done N-Gage emulation? Is that a thing right now? And your channel came up, and I was like, oh, I like this guy.
Yeah, my yeah, thank you. My video is extremely detailed. It tells you everything you need to know. A little bit too much, actually.
That's called having a niche. And it's awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. I will watch niche content on stuff I will never ever touch in my life. I just hearing someone experienced on the topic makes me wildly interested in it, and I'll watch all their videos.
I wish I had we got a question from Tonhum about Elder Scrolls on N-Gage. Yes, they did have an Elder Scrolls game. A full 3D open world RPG on your phone in 2003. Like, that is unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
This thing was competing with the Game Boy Advance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just
phenomenal.
It's crazy because I was a supporter of the N-Gage. I actually owned one when it launched, like a few weeks after, because they were doing a lot of promos on it. And like, how did Nokia mess this up? I mean, I was playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, Tomb Raider on a mobile device in 2003. It's like,
and it's the only place to play a PS1 style SSX or Red Faction game. That's the coolest thing.
Red Faction blast too. Red Faction is actually
blowing up walls and stuff. It's so good.
Okay, so actually, so I wanted to say I've actually built a gamepad specifically for emulating N-Gage games, because when you go to emulate N-Gage, the problem is the controls, right? N-Gage has 19 buttons that are used in every single game. Many games, especially the SSX, uses every single button on the keypad to do different tricks. It's ridiculous. So it's impossible to play with a standard gamepad or, God forbid, a touchscreen. Actually, in this case, touch is probably better. But on my channel, I have a short which will show you my N-Gage gamepad, which I built from the ground up. It runs using an ESP32, Bluetooth, rechargeable, and it has all the buttons you need to play N-Gage games. And I am planning to open source the parts and the design and the code. If you go to the Shorts tab, Stubbs, you'll see it.
Yes, I want to see this.
Yep, there you go, the second one.
There, right there.
It's really cool.
And,
I've been following that. I love that.
That's a neat little thing.
And it works.
You madman.
Perfect.
What have you done?
And I'm pretty proud of it. I do have one problem though. I really wanted to actually show it on the stream, but actually the tolerances for the buttons are so small that over time they've just shrunk like a fraction, and so the buttons are sticking. So I can't show you it on stream, but yeah, it's actually easy to make. I'm gonna have a full tutorial on how to build your own. It's all gonna be open source. It costs like $15 to build. It's good stuff.
This is crazy, dude.
If I do say so myself.
Yeah, no, this is wild. I've never heard of anybody tackling.
It's so important like too, just from a preservation point of view as well. To be able to experience these, if you're somehow you caught a video on N-Gage, you're like, I want to know more about it, and you can go and emulate these games and be able to do these kind of things. It's so important. This is an important part of gaming history. And I really I know N-Gage people laugh when they hear it, but you know, it actually did a lot of cool things, and it's definitely worth investigating it. So yeah, I'm all for N-Gage stuff.
Put it on your Etsy store. Everybody.
Yeah, I was considering it, but the amount of time it takes to build and the components and shipping a battery and all that is going to cost hundreds of dollars. Yeah, and I think it's a really good beginner project. So I might do like a commission, maybe if somebody's really desperate for me to do it for them, but otherwise I will open source it. I will have I've already recorded the tutorial.
I don't have a 3D printer. I don't know how to use a 3D printer. I don't know what you guys do with this 3D printing, but I'm so impressed with it every time I see it. And Oh, see,
Ooh.
you're making fancy things. What the heck is
I'm
that?
experimenting. Like that's just an STL file I pulled up. I'm
doing
curious to
over
see
here?
what you can do and how can I tweak it myself. But yeah, I mean, Shem was an inspiration for that for sure. I'm trying to kind of figure out what can I do? How can I have fun with this? You know, so it's cool. It opens up different doors. I love it.
Well, I'm very excited for this. This was, you all heard it here first. Well, his shorts is where you would hear it first, but this is the freaking coolest. I can't wait to not have to deal with touchscreen numkey buttons for my N-Gage, or not have enough buttons on my controller to map to play N-Gage games. I can play Crash Team Racing, Shem's favorite N-Gage game.
Oh, that's such a crazy release for N-Gage. So freaking mental. Just you play the pre-release like beta, and it's fantastic. It's so good. And then the release, they just widened the FOV, making the entire game unplayable, completely unplayable. It's the most N-Gage release ever.
They probably didn't have, the dev team probably didn't have N-Gages. One guy had an N-Gage, and the last coder who touched the project was like, "Time to ship tomorrow. Just in case, we better do this." And then he just went about his life.
Yeah.
So
I will say, like, my last point on the N-Gage is that the N-Gage hardware itself is the limiting factor on N-Gage games. And there are some absolutely phenomenal games on N-Gage, like Pathway to Glory. The Colin McRae Rally is just brilliant. And, some really interesting exclusives as well. Like somebody mentioned Rift's Promise of Power. What was it called? The little Diablo style one.
Gameloft had exclusives as well. Actually, I think that was probably some of their earlier works was working with the N-Gage.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Asphalt was on there.
Asphalt, yeah. I mean, they were doing a lot of cool stuff on there as well. So yeah.
And it's really, really, really worth your time if you're interested in old obscure stuff to just knock up the emulator, give it a go. It's a bit more work than a standard emulator, but it's good. And they just released NetPlay, so.
What?
Pretty awesome. Or local? No, it's local multiplayer, but it works over private VPN, so you can do NetPlay. Brilliant. So, in Elder Scrolls, for example, you can all be walking around the same open world on different maps and run into each other. Like in 2003 on your phone.
This is crazy. I can't handle this anymore. I'm upset. I can't recover.
The world wasn't ready for it.
We really weren't. Speaking of the world, what the world wasn't ready for. Are you ready for this? The CNC PSP Go by Slystral made one of these for Damien, and Damien, right? That's your favorite device right now.
My other slider that's also a favorite of mine.
Is that the version that has the big battery on it?
Big old fat battery on there. I think it's like a 4,500 milliamp battery in there with like a 3D printed back on it.
He did another version that had like 9,000 milliamp hour, right? Or something crazy.
Yeah, it was I think an 8,000 in there.
Yeah, like it's just like this honking brick he's carrying around. Hello, this is my PSP Go.
When I got mine, he was like, I can do the 8,000. I think I have everything I need for it. And I was like, I think that's just too much, buddy. This thing already goes 4 or 5 days of just me playing games on it with on vacation and stuff. I think I'm good. I mean, because the original had like a 960 something milliamp battery in it, so like the 4,500 is already huge. So it plays PSP games natively in a little tiny pocket thing. So. And plus all the other systems, mostly all right.
Yeah, I mean, and it has the little nubbin for me, so I like having the analog stick for PSP. So I like this over the Xperia Play, for instance. Still not one that I really got into, again, because maybe I didn't have it back in the day, but I love the novelty of it. I love that it's sort of a clamshell, and that it's branded by Sony, and that it has a pretty thriving custom firmware scene, too. So people still seem to use this and enjoy it in 2023. Rob's retrospective is coming. These? I hope so.
Slystral?
I hope
still
so.
Putting these together.
We'll have to ask him.